Titan balance in the brand new Titan Brawl game mode is tumultuous at best. Let's just kind of have a little bit of a free talk here about my opinions on it, just so I can get everything out there for everyone to listen to, and if you agree with me, cool, and if not, oh well, hey, I'm not here to argue, just this is kind of how I feel the game mode plays out, so let's get going, guys. So I think it might make the most sense to go through this Titan by Titan. So we'll start off with Ion, because Ion is by far the Titan that I have played the most in Titan Brawl, because I feel that she is the single best pick that you can make in the game mode, and here's why. This Titan is all about laser shot, laser shot, laser shot. Lambert EXE, I expect you to clip this and make your own stupid video about this. Ion's laser shot. It's a long-range sniper ability that deals quite a lot of damage on a direct hit, and, well, it's able to get critical hits. It's hit scans, there's no travel time. Enemy Titans are really, really big, slow-moving targets. It's very difficult to actually miss a shot on an enemy Titan. Even if they're aware of you and trying to dodge it, it's still hard to miss, right? Laser shot is a very, very easy ability to hit, and you can hit it from very, very long ranges. This is compounded by the fact that Ion is currently afflicted with a bug, and I say that in air quotes because I have no idea if this is a bug or intended or what, but if you're holding laser shot, charging it, I mean, well, not charging, but just holding it and waiting to shoot it, you can melee, and it will cancel that laser shot, and you don't expend any energy whatsoever, and laser shot's not put on any kind of a cooldown whatsoever, so there's some issues going on here with Ion being always able to have a laser shot ready and waiting to fire, and all you gotta do is just keep that laser shot up, and the moment you see somebody, it's you flick your mouse, let go of your ordnance button, and then you dash back behind cover. You have just gotten a bunch of free damage at an enemy Titan, and they might not even know where the hell you shot them from, and at the same time, you are building up your core meter very quickly. One laser shot is worth like 10 or 11% of your core, about, something in that range, just from me kind of perceiving it in the middle of a game. I've never actually really done a hard testing, but I mean, it's in that ballpark, right? About 10% per shot. If you start with overcore, you're already at 30%, so 2 laser shots on somebody, and you're going to be at 50 to 55% core charge. You only got to repeat that a couple more times to get a core, and Ion's laser core is huge damage per second. Again, potential from long range. You can cross-map somebody from one side of Homestead to the other with your laser core, and it still hit scan, and still does the same DPS as it would if you're point blank. At least I think it does. If not, it feels like it does. So Ion is really, really, really good at staying really far back, staying really safe, at peeking corners, playing extremely lame, able to get big spikes of damage without ever really exposing herself to receiving damage. And now, whenever she gets into a situation where someone's close to her and she has troubles, well, she has some of the best tools in the game to deal with that close-range aggression. She's got her Vortex Shield, which will let her keep herself alive for longer, return enemy fire. Very, very good if a Legion blindsides you, or more likely than not, spawns behind you. You can at least keep yourself alive while dealing some good damage to that Legion. You have your primary rifle's splitter shot function, so my personal recommendation is to run the splitter lens on your splitter rifle, because what that'll allow you to do is engage fat Titans at point blank and do super high DPS to them, way more DPS than what laser shots would let you do. It also, more importantly, it'll allow you to engage a Ronan. So Ronan is the other superpower in this mode, and I'll talk about him like in detail later, but the big thing right now is that Ronan is the other superpower. He's gonna get in your face, and he's gonna try to ruin your day. But the thing is with Ronan is that whenever he's not sword blocking, he's taking full damage just like any other Titan would. So if you are patient with your splitter lens function, you're patient with your energy reserves, you're cognizant of how much ammo you have in your magazine, what you can do is switch over to your splitter lens, wait for that Ronan to start laying into you. Instead of trying to play the mini game or the meta game of Vortex shielding just 1 or 2 of the shots and reflecting them back to make the Ronan scared and blah 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 blah, which I'm sure 90% of you don't even do anyways. Instead of playing that metagame, what you can do is wait for him to start laying into you, and then you just lay into him back, and you're going to be able to do more DPS to the Ronan than the Ronan can deal to you, and you're going to win in pretty much every single fight. I mean, at least as long as your aim is true and you're not missing and the Ronan isn't seeing what you're doing, I mean, which most Ronans won't. It's a really, really good way of dealing with that superpower. So Ion is good at dealing with the long-range threats, the mid-range threats, and if you play well, Ion is acceptable versus the close range threats as well, and it could be really good, but it's at least acceptable. But the big thing is always that energy management, which, I mean, that's fair. That's how you keep Ion in check. That's how you keep her balanced, is you have to manage that energy. So if you're starting to laser shot somebody from long range, you got to be wary if you're doing that if there's a Ronan nearby. You might not want to use your laser shots if there's a Ronan near, because you might want to deal with the Ronan first, but you know, that's a whole huge discussion. I'm going probably way over most people's heads. So just to keep it plain and to prevent me from going too far in some random wild-ass tangent like I always do, just make sure that you're staying long range with Ion. Use those laser shots, abuse them, and no Titan can really stand up to you. If you fight against a Tone, well, they got to drop a particle wall, and then you can just walk away from the particle wall, and they've accomplished nothing. If you're fighting a Legion, well, you have some of the best tools in the game at killing Legions. If you're fighting Scorch, LOL, who plays Scorch? Just walk backwards, and you're fine, right? If you're playing against a Ronan, you've got your Splitter Lens function, you've got Vortex Shield if you really want to play that minigame, you have your melee as well. Melee is key in fighting against Ronans, and I'll talk about that in the Ronan section. If you're fighting against other Ions, then all you got to do is be better at peeking with laser shots. And I mean, really, the best part about Splitter Lens is against any matchup, what it's going to do is it's going to build your core meter really, really, really fast. So you're going to empty your magazine, you're going to empty your energy reserves, but you're going to build that core meter super ridiculously fast. So you can empty your mag and then dump a laser core into somebody, and you're almost assured to come out on top of that fight, or at least deal immense amounts of damage to a couple of Titans, because it's just so much DPS. Like, they can't kill you fast enough to prevent that damage from happening. Sometimes a good offense with Ion is better than a good defense. So it's a very, very, very powerful Titan in all roles, in all matchups, at all ranges, and I encourage you guys to give Ion a serious go. Next up, I'll just go ahead and move into Ronan then. Actually, you know what? No. Next up, I want to give my voice a little break. I'm going to move into Tone. So, Tone is interesting. Tone has been nerfed about 3 or 4 times now. Her anti-Titan damage is not what it used to be. It's still good, but not amazing. But it's good, right? Really, you're delegated to just trying to get your particle wall down as much as you can, be a support player for your team, and just keep consistent damage flowing on enemies and make them constantly fear your tracking rockets, because that's where your real damage comes, is those. But with the addition of all the notifications and enemy screens of how many locks you have and then when you're actually locked, they're able to play very defensively. They can play around your rockets usually very well. Tone is difficult to play by yourself in a lot of cases. She just doesn't have the raw damage output anymore to really, really succeed in a lot of cases. But then again, if you're really, really good at Tone and you're playing against maybe just some average Titan Brawl players and not like some really, really good LTS players, you might be able to run some people over just because they don't understand the Tone matchup well enough. And that certainly happens a lot, but Tone is just in an interesting place. I don't believe she's overpowered or ridiculous in the mode. I think that she actually fits pretty nicely into her role. She's able to be that soldier, that frontline warrior. I keep saying she is. Tone is she? I think Tone is a she. I don't remember. Either way, she's able to deal a lot of damage. Well, I mean, as long as you have the salvo core, she's able to deal a lot of damage. But it takes her a lot of investment time to deal that damage with those salvo rockets. And it makes her kind of just a worse Ion in the case that she can't deal damage quickly and effectively. She has to be out in the open for a while and then build up towards her damage in order to make it actually work. Now, I do feel like Reinforced Particle Wall is still the way to go with her in this mode, just because there's going to be a lot of enemy Tones you're going to play against, a lot of enemy Legions as well, and you really want to be able to block their core abilities whenever possible. The Reinforced Particle Wall will absorb almost, if not an entire salvo core from an enemy Tone, so you need to keep that ready and available to you as an option at all times. Now, it will still get ripped through by a Legion Smart Core, because for some reason a Smart Core bullet gets extra damage against the particle wall or something. I don't know how that mechanic works, but it does kind of work that way. Ion will still break through the particle wall in just a couple of ticks of damage off the laser core, so particle wall is really good, but it depends on who you're playing against, right? If you're playing against an enemy team who knows how to go around the particle wall, who knows that they simply have to shoot the salvo core above the wall and then arc it back down on top of you to kill you, then maybe you don't want to use the Antarctica Wall. Maybe you'll use something else to buff other parts of your Titan. Like maybe you'll use Pulse Echo, because you can get 2 locks on the enemy team for like pretty much no investment from your part whatsoever, and now you only need to get to hit each of them 1 time with your 40 mil to get a tracker rocket lock. So there are some choices within the meta to make Tone behave differently and perform differently, and it's just all a matter of reading the enemy team, reading their skill level, reading how they play the game, and reacting to them. So Tone is flexible. Tone can do a lot of different things. Tone can actually delete Ronins pretty well. If the Tone player is smart and they're patient, they're able to get those 3 locks on that Ronin and force the phase reflex or force the phase dash or whatever, then you could actually be performing a good service to your team, because that could be forcing the Ronin out of the position they want to be in. If the Ronin is engaging an enemy or engaging one of your friends and he's not using his sword block, then you can just lay into them with tracker rockets and you will delete that Ronin in like 2 rocket salvos or something. It's like really, really strong. But I don't know, like Tone feels right. You know, she feels like she has weaknesses, but she also has strengths, and she has a good place within the metagame, and I'm really, really much so a fan of where she's sitting right now. She's not overpowered, she's not underpowered, she's just right, in the right hands. Now we'll move on to Ronan. Ronan is the other superpower of this game mode, and the big reason for that, I think, is sword block and just the crazy, crazy amounts of mobility that Ronan has. So you have your 3 dashes plus the phase reflex dash if you're playing that way, or if you're using overcore, which I feel like you probably should be, then you'll have 2 dashes plus the phase dash. You have a lot of mobility. You have the sword block to also block damage. The big thing with Ronan is that Ronan commands a lot of attention from enemy teams. So if you get into somebody's backline, the enemy team must respond to you. They must look at you and start doing stuff to you. And if they don't start looking at you and don't start attacking you, and they continue fighting your team, then you're free to start dealing big damage to them and going wild and crazy on them. Now, all you got to do is get an arc wave out, get a melee hit or 2, and some of your shotgun shots. And if you're running overcore, you're going to get that sword block ability, or I'm sorry, the sword core ability very, very quickly. And the enemy team has to respect that. They have to respect your sword core. They have to respect your ability to just delete their entire team with Highlander very, very quickly. And it's really, really frustrating to deal with, because if you catch an enemy Titan out of position, they're so screwed. Ronan applies so much pressure on an enemy team, even without even doing damage, that it's just very harrowing to play against. You have to engage in enemy Ronan in such a particular and meticulous way that a lot of pub-level players in Titanfall just don't really accomplish well. And it's not to fault them or to say that they're bad, it's just a really freaking hard thing to do, and it's not something that players have had to deal with much lately, because Ronan has not had much popularity in the metagame until the last couple of months. So people are still learning how to deal with it, and people are getting better and better and better with Ronan, so everyone that's trying to play against the Ronan is just a step behind the Ronan player. So I'm not sure that this is having to do with Ronan itself being overpowered. Ronan is very strong right now, and we would need a lot more time and a lot of gameplay and other modes to determine if he is truly an overpowered Titan. But what I can say is that he really forces people to play outside of their comfort zone to beat him, and it's difficult to deal with. So if you want to run through lobbies and absolutely destroy people, not because your Titan is necessarily super powerful, but because it puts people on tilt, it makes them upset and angry and not play optimally, it throws them off balance so much that you can win purely off of that mental battle, right? It's not as much a physical battle in a lot of cases. You're just winning that mental that mental fortitude test. And if you have a good team to back you up, then, I mean, you just go wild and crazy on people with Ronan. Like, if you're playing in voice comms with 1 or 2 other people, you're playing Ronan, your buddy's in Ion or Tone, and you're both coordinating and saying, okay, see that Legion down there? We're going to pick him off, right? Both of you get in on that Legion, you both get close to him, or rather, at least you as Ronan do. You take his attention, you sword block his entire magazine full of the Predator cannon. Your Ion just goes nuts on him from full range, or your Tone or whatever goes nuts on him from full range. If the Legion stops paying attention to you and they look at them, they hold the gun shield towards them, well, suddenly you can arc wave them from behind, you'll hit them, slow them, drop that gun shield down so your teammates can continue firing, or they're going to just run away. You're dealing big damage from behind. Like, it's Ronan is so good at forcing that 2 versus 1 or that 3 versus 1 engagement, or even in big engagements, like you have a full team versus full team, like a 5v5, just a huge Titan battle comes out. Ronan commands presence on the battlefield, and that's important. And I know I'm just rambling and repeating myself, but I can't stress enough that Ronan commands presence, Ronan commands attention. If you are able to turn that to your advantage, Ronan is the best Titan in LTS, hands down. It is so important to have a good 1 or 2 on your team that if no one else is playing it, you should seriously consider switching to it, because you will create fantastic opportunities for your team by playing this Titan. Now, be mindful of your deaths, be mindful of your health meter. I've seen a lot of people who are in this situation say, oh, we don't have a Ronan, I should pick Ronan. And then they'll go 3 and 11, and it's like, well, you didn't actually help us because you died so many times. You may have gotten us some kills we otherwise wouldn't have gotten, but you died a lot more than you would have if you played an Ion and you were more patient and held back. So you have to give and take with Ronan, right? You have to know when to pick him. You have to be actually good at the Titan, because Ronan is a very skill-intensive Titan, in order to actually bend all of that performance to the betterment of your team. So just be careful with him, right? And there's also that one thing with the sword core and melee, as I said I would talk about before, and I kind of forgot, so we'll just kind of tack it on here. So if you're playing against a Ronan who's sword coring you, what you can do is, if you can predict when he's going to swing that sword, you can melee him right before he melees you. And this is a mechanic that works not only for sword core, but for any like melee battles in the game. If you hit the first melee, like you're just a couple of frames ahead of the enemy hitting you with their melee, you will push them back with your melee, and their melee is going to whiff on you. So if you hit first, then their melee completely whiffs and does no damage, and they're just wasting a shit ton of time. So like, it's really hard to react to that happening, so you're going to get 2 or 3 punches like that in a row, where you're going to go melee, 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 and they're going to miss 2 or 3 times before they realize, oh shit, I'm getting just completely beaten on this mechanic right now. I can't keep meleeing. I have to back off, and I have to adjust my timings. And in that time, you've dealt like 1,500 damage to them. You've wasted their time. Your teammates, if you have them nearby, will be wailing on that person because they see them wailing on you, and they become a high priority target in their minds. So like, you just have to be very careful when playing as Ronan to not fall into the trap of losing to this. You need to be able to hit those max range sword swings where you're outside of their melee range entirely, so only your melee could possibly hit. And if you're going to be point blank with the swings, then you better make sure that you're doing them at the right times and that you're getting lucky. And if you start missing, you got to hit in that sword block, and you got to hunker down for the majority of the rest of your sword core, because everyone is going to be gunning for you. So keep your eyes on that. Just be aware of that thing. Be aware of that just being a thing that happens, right? And you'll be pretty much a-okay. It's a very, very powerful little footsie mechanic, so if you're used to playing fighting games, then you'll understand exactly what footsies are and what I'm talking about here. But if you're new to fighting games, or you've never played one before, that is a fighting game fundamental right there, is that you want to hit people at the maximum range of your punch, so that way only you can hit them and they can't hit you, right? You want to catch them out doing something. You want to catch them pressing buttons when they shouldn't be with your really fast jab or whatever it is that you're doing. And this sort of melee dance that you can do is really, really indicative and representative of that. So try your best not to succumb to it, and try your best to master it so you can really screw over the enemy team. Okay, so next up we have 3 more Titans to go. So we have to talk about North Star, we have to talk about Legion, and Scorch. We'll talk about North Star, I guess. So North Star is interesting in that she is filling the same role as Ion, and that you are trying to be that long-range support, that long-range consistent damage. You're not really going to be getting a lot of kills, but you're just adding value and damage to your team. The problem is that, your core ability is kind of crap. Like, it's better in LTS because you only use it when there's a couple of Titans left, so you're not going to get blown out of the sky by 5 people as soon as you press the core button. But in Titan Brawl, there's always going to be 5 Titans in the map. I mean, well, maybe there'll be 3 if there's a couple people respawning, but for the majority of the time, there's going to be 5 people on the enemy team. And if you press that button and you start flying, you're much more likely to be shot at by multiple targets while using that core than you would in something like LTS. So there's a problem in that the core is very difficult to use. You have to use it in very particular areas of the map at very particular timings in order to have some real success with it, and it's just questionable at best. I don't know. It's a questionable choice in a lot of cases. So North Star just seems like a worse Ion to me. Maybe you should try spamming a lot of tether traps around the map. I certainly had a good deal of success with that. The little bit of time that I did play North Star in this mode, I would run the double tether trap ability and just spam them on cooldown everywhere that I could. And I heard a lot of people getting caught by them, which is really nice because at least you're providing some disruption to the enemy team. Now, it would be kind of nifty if the tether traps also did some damage, like if they were electrified and they did 50 damage per second, just some small amount, but enough to annoy people and to get a little bit of extra damage in. That would be really, really nifty just to make them feel a little bit less terrible. But frankly, they don't really do much. I mean, they help. They can irritate people. They can force them to be caught out of position. And in a game mode like Titan Brawl, that could be really, really powerful. But I don't feel that the value tether traps and North Star in general brings to the table is more important than just having another Ion on your team. Like, I would rather have 4 Ions on my team than have 3 Ions and a North Star. I'd rather just have the 4th Ion. So, like, that's kind of how good Ion is right now, and that's sort of why North Star just doesn't really succeed, is you have that railgun shot, which is not that much stronger than laser shot. It's not hit scan either. It takes a long time to charge up, and Ion can get 2 laser shots out before you can get, 1 railgun shot to hit a target. It's just, I don't know. North Star just seems completely and utterly outclassed in this game mode by Ion, so I don't see the point in playing him. Or rather, her. I don't see the point in playing her. Excuse me, Internet, I'm sorry. Now, we're just left with Scorch and Legion, and I'm just going to kind of run through these because we're already well over 20 minutes at this point, and I gotta get going. So, Legion, the thing with Legion is that he is a good Titan for this mode. His gun shield is fantastic. Smart Core just enables you to put out so much damage on people. You don't even need the lock-on mechanic. If you're fighting long range and long range mode, you can just have infinite ammo on their Ions from really far away, and it's really, really nice. But the thing is that, again, because Ion pervades so much in this game mode, it's really hard to justify taking Legion, because even if you're playing long-range support with the long-range mode only, if you shoot at an Ion, he's very liable to take your bullets and direct them at your teammate, so that way your damage is now hurting your teammate instead of hurting the enemy team, and you're just really, really wasting your time and your resources. So I don't really see a lot of situations where Legion would perform better than, again, an Ion just peeking with laser shots. As a Legion, you have to stand out in the open, you have to devote a lot of time to dealing damage to targets. It just doesn't seem like the smartest thing to do ever, but I mean, if you have an organized team, of course you can make Legion work. Legion can be a force to be reckoned with in this mode for sure, but he needs a lot of support, and you need to be a really, really smart Legion player to make all that work. I just don't see a world where Legion is going to be better than just having an Ion. So, again, I don't really understand this one. Maybe somebody else can prove me wrong, but I don't really get it. The only kind of interesting thing with Legion is the close-range power shot versus all the Ronan spam you're going to see. But because of the long wind-up time, that might not be that viable. I mean, Ronan's, I don't know. So I don't know if a Ronan can actually block that close-range power shot on reaction. I want to say they can't. They have to be committing to the sword block before they see your gun barrel start to glow orange, so you can probably fairly consistently rely on that to deal a big amount of damage to Ronans. That's almost a bar of their health by hitting them with one of those close-range power shots. I think it's 2,000 damage off the top of my head. Ronan has 7,500 health, so like you're dealing a good chunk of his health bar, like 25, 33% in that, somewhere in that range, kind of depending on how much else your teammates are doing to them at the same time as well. And it seems decent for that, but I don't know if that close-range power shot spike damage is good enough to justify running an entire Legion instead of just, again, having a 4th or 5th or 6th Ion on your team. I don't really see the benefit of that. Same kind of problems apply to Scorch, is that he has to expose himself for really, really long periods of time in order to deal damage. he has to be able to get behind the enemy team in order to deal damage, and with the advent of respawns, that's freaking hard to do because you can run through one lane. You know, say like you're just coming off the spawn in Exoplanet, right? And you're running on the right lane with Scorch, and the enemy team is all in the left lane. You run through the enemy team on the right lane, and you go through that tunnel thing to get to them on the other half of the map, and by the time you get there, the two people you killed have respawned with the team, and they're going to be watching for you coming out of that tunnel, and you just can't do anything. Like, it's really hard to get close range with Scorch, which is where you need to be, because all of his damage is coming from that Inferno Shield. If you're not using the Inferno Shield, then you're probably not dealing good enough damage. Now, that's not to say that Firewall is crappy damage, or Incendiary Traps is crappy damage. That's not true at all. They can deal huge amounts of damage, but they rely on an enemy team to be stuck in them, and it's not often that that's going to happen. Now, granted, I can see the fact that enemy Titans will clump a lot in these game modes, so if you're able to snipe them with a good Incendiary Trap, you're dealing like 1.5, 2k damage to like 3 Titans simultaneously. That's a lot of damage very quickly, so I can certainly see some situations where it's actually really, really good, but you just have to be super duper careful because you're very liable to be sniped out and just lose your Titan a lot of times, and it's hard to justify the damage output with how much damage you're going to receive and how much you're going to be dying as Scorch. This is worth further investigation. A Scorch as a one-of on your team in small maps like Exoplanet where people are likely to be clumped up on accident could potentially be really, really good, but at the same time, in those situations, you could just be playing Ion, using Splitter Lens, shooting a bunch of Titans all at the same time with your Splitter Lens, building your core instantly, and then just coring that group of enemy Titans. I struggle to see where Scorch really shines over Ion. Like, there's a few situations where it might be better in, you know, in niche situations, but overall, for just the full game benefits of playing the best possible Titan, I don't think that the value that Scorch will give you will ever supersede the value from Ion. So, in summary, guys, if you want like a Titan Brawl tier list, S tier is Ion, A tier is Ronan, B tier would be Tone and possibly Scorch, possibly Legion, and then C tier would be Northstar, maybe F tier Northstar. There's just so much domination happening by Ion right now that I have trouble recommending anything else but Ion. I want to recommend other things. I want to sing the praises of the other Titans, but I really just don't see it. I really don't. So, anyways, guys, I hope that this was informative to you. I hope that you learned something from this, or at least found my opinions to be interesting, if nothing else. Thank you all for watching, and I don't know what I'm going to do next, so whenever I figure that out, I'll see you in the next video, guys. Take care.